Good afternoon. Welcome back to our Beyond the Application Cybersecurity Conference. And for the first of our afternoon sessions, I'm very pleased to be joined by Jonathan Cooper from Anapsys. And we're going to take a look in this session at the outside threats to the SAP application estate and how to help mitigate those threats and the risks that they present. We're going to take a look at vulnerability management. It's an important part of securing your whole estate, and SAP is certainly no exception to that. And some of the recent analysis by Anapsys has shown that the speed of vulnerable systems being detected and breached is quite surprising to some people. And the sophistication of the attacks themselves. We're seeing these APTs, advanced persistent threats, really start to target SAP, and in a very sophisticated manner. They clearly know what they're doing. So with all of that in mind, Jonathan, I'd like to hand over to you to introduce yourself and take us through it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for the intro. Hi, I'm John Cooper. I'm from Anapsys. I'm pleased to be with you today. I've been working with SAP now for about 20 years. Different versions of SAP, different flavors, and I hope that today you'll find this interesting, and it may be quite new to a lot of people, hopefully so, and you'll learn something from today, because we have a product, and we do find that a lot of people aren't aware of these issues. So it's something you'll find of value, I'm sure. So a few of the bullet points we'll talk about today. We'll talk about current challenges within SAP and security, and we'll talk about the SAP Threat Intelligence Report that Tom just mentioned. And then we'll look at the platform and what we call the maturity model, which is really important, how it aligns to and solve a lot of problems. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. And if I've got time, I'm quite happy to show you a little demonstration of a vulnerability and how it can bypass traditional auths and controls. Now with the platform, the Anapsys platform can detect this. And then we can investigate further. So if I've got time for that, we'll do that. So at Anapsys, our goal is to protect mission critical applications, and there's some of them shown there. It could be finance systems, could be HR systems, supply chain management, SRM, and it could also be SAP, likes of Oracle, Salesforce. And due to its critical nature, there's many stakeholders around the org who have a vested interest in these applications. So from a security perspective, to minimize risk, from compliance or a lights on to support the business, there's many stakeholders around this. And one thing which we'll talk about today, the key thing is that people believe that SAP is safe by default, that it's behind, it's on-prem, it's behind a firewall, it's air-gapped, the internal general controls, authentication, audits you have in place, many things you have in place. Or that attackers simply aren't targeting the SAP systems. And we'll show today that that's not the case anymore. So things have moved on. So there's been many kind of changes over the last decade or two, even certainly since the time I've been using SAP. I've seen a huge change, both from a technology and a business driver perspective. And we are now clearly in a real-time, hyper-connected digital world. So there's lots of drivers, but top left, if you look at the cloud, this means the traditional firewall value has been in place for years has diminished with the use of remote working, as we all saw spike massively last year with the COVID. As you work from home, work on mobile devices, bring your own device, as you work from public Wi-Fi's, which I've done on the road many times. And that all means the surface area of attack has increased massively for attacks. So that's one thing. The other thing is a digital transformation, which is also a massive driver, over the last few years. And this is focused on time to value, speed and agile delivery of that functionality, and not the security requirements or compliance requirements. And on compliance, there's been a huge increase over the years with compliance regs, such as GDPR. This year, EU SOX is due. And with that, the fines as well. So audit is traditionally process-driven, point in time, sample-based due to the volume of checks that are required. Or it can be reactive based on findings from internal or external audits. And with that is a high manual effort. So we want to move this to a more automated, continuous assessment of the controls in place. And with that landscape moving to more satellite and cloud and SaaS-based solutions from the traditional on-prem core, that becomes more difficult and more complex and more costly. And then we've got the classic traditional change of things like routine maintenance, patching, modernization, new feature requests, which again all introduce risk. So around that as well is what I call the multiplier effect, where there's lots of stakeholders, as I mentioned, but there's a kind of a security communication gap between them as they don't speak the same language. So even if you look at a very small example, so with SAP security, roles and auths in ECC, and SAP are different to analysis auths in BW, are different to structural auths in HR systems, are different to privileges in HANA, permissions in SuccessFactors, Salesforce, etc. And that's just one example. So there is that multiplier effect. And also delivery models. Is it in-house? Is it through a COE? Is it an SI? Is it contract? Is it managed service? Is it managed globally, distributed globally across different time zones? Which all means there's a huge complexity increase and this responsibility gap, the comms gap. So we see that a lot, speaking to lots and lots of customers. So I've just explained how, and you can see there's some great examples there, just explained how complexity and new challenges are introducing risk. And here we can see that cyber attackers are taking advantage of those risks and increasingly targeting these applications. So the timeline, as you can see there, you can see from 2016, there's been government issued cert alerts, and these are specifically targeted at SAP and mission critical systems. So this shows, and the reason why the government cert alerts have been issued by the Department of Homeland Security and the equivalent UK and the EMEA governments is the fact that it's the high impact of these and the sophistication of these attacks. And these aren't lone wolves anymore, teenagers in the room doing it for fun. It's organized crime groups, it's nation state sponsored level attacks. Just about every time I open a newspaper, in the business section now, I see, cyber attacks and the impacts or the high problems associated to this, the knock-on effects of this. So people believe that attackers aren't targeting SAP, and that's not the case anymore. And we've got evidence to show this. Which brings us on to the press release. So I think it was in March, SAP and Anapsys released a press report to show that we have real-world evidence that the crown jewels in SAP have been targeted by the attack community. And there's some interesting stats there you can see, but we saw kind of two key things. They were highly sophisticated and the speed of the attacks. So we have the Anapsys Threat Cloud, which is a global network of systems behind firewalls, and we use them to monitor attack activity. And over this 6-month period here, which we can see, we noted over 300 plus attacks, exploits, and over 100 hands-on attacks. So we've got evidence and video evidence captured of this, of attackers seamlessly navigating through the SAP systems. And even to the point where we've seen evidence of people accessing through an exploit, patching the system, so no other attackers can gain access through the same vulnerability. And then on the bottom there, you can see the speed of the exploits. So within 3 days of a patch being released on Patch Tuesday, we've seen fully weaponized exploits available to download. So you can gain access through those exploits if you don't patch within that 72-hour window. So the key point of this is to say that SAP has a target on its back. This is real. And that's due to many things, and probably the amount of world's revenue, I think nearly 80% now processed through an SAP system globally. The number of probably SAP customers, 400,000 plus now to target. So this is real. And some of these vulnerabilities are over 10 years old, which we saw exploited. So within 1 minute, you can gain full admin access to the SAP system. So you're probably saying, well, why is this important? I've got controls. Well, SAP security focuses on the user access within SAP and authentication and identity, single sign-on. And these are all vital, absolutely. But the point is that attackers can bypass these controls. So if we looked at the likelihood, the probability of risk there increasing. If we measure it on a risk perspective, we can also need to consider the impact. So what's the impact of this? So with an SAP online transaction processing system, the key thing is uptime. And if you have unscheduled downtime, then there's a massive short and long-term impact. As you can see here, there's a number of figures again. But long-term is around reputational damage, around customer churn, impact to the bottom line, investor confidence, market cap reductions. And that is everything that the board cares about, which is where it gets interesting, because almost all publicly available information and financial statements will identify cyber as a risk, and it's high and it's increasing. So and then you look at the details of those and the mitigation steps around those, around IT general controls, sample-based audits, firewalls, SIM tools, networks, cyber insurance, whilst again are required, are not effective in today's world through these cyber attacks. And it's what we call the ERP blind spot. So the impact is increasing, and as we become more and more reliant on these systems, and there's not a lot we can do about that, but the one lever we can try and address is the probability of attack. So you're probably thinking, well, I already have a solution for this. You will have other cyber programs in place and other controls there, but we've identified 3 areas, as you can see here, where business critical applications, the app level focus, are missing from existing cyber security portfolios. So if we look at the vulnerability management, it's about understanding the size and scope of risk within these applications, which are often, as I mentioned, in a hybrid state, moving to the cloud with that extra layer of complexity, and also the shared responsibility gap, who owns that responsibility. And then we have the threat detection. And so you likely have a SOC team and SIM tools in place. But what you won't have, or often don't have, is those SAP or mission critical specific logs and events being raised to the SOC team so they can raise the alarm. And this is things around privilege misuse, compensating controls, zero-day threats, where you can't patch. In its case, you can't often patch in 3 days. That's it's not often really can do that. But you can have compensating controls, so you are aware of those exploits. And then we've got app security testing. So this is around the dev team, primarily focused on, again, the functionality, not the quality of code, and the security front of mind. And this is about enabling what we call the DevSecOps. So it's either get clean or take a by design approach to new projects, new migrations, to stay clean. So it's ideal for cloud and S4 journeys. Okay. So we have the Anapsys platform, and it covers the extended enterprise. So if you look on the bottom there, you can see that we cover SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, Workday, SuccessFactors, various applications. It can be on-prem, cloud, or hybrid, and it's holistic in nature, as we can plug in to those systems and perform scans and monitoring of those systems and analysis for code, for example, and vulnerabilities within those systems. And you'll see there's 4 key products. We've got Assess, which covers the vulnerability management. We have Defend, which is around continuous monitoring for real-time threats. We have Control, which supports the DevSecOps for the millions of lines of customer code you will have and created over time throughout your whole SAP time. And also you've got Comply, which is around automation of the audit, and then move towards this, instead of point in time, a continuous compliance and monitoring to match the real-time world. And many organizations start in one area and then expand through what we call a maturity model, which we can advise on, which we've done many times. And we have a wide partner ecosystem on the left, as you can see, which Turnkey obviously is one of our key partners in the UK and support us on many opportunities. And we also, on the right, we integrate to many of the tools now, the SIM tools for tracking and monitoring purposes, and also for ticketing like ServiceNow. So you can track and monitor this as part of the respond element of the NIST pillar. And also we got the research labs, which I'll talk about later, but that's the engine behind everything we do at Anapsys. So hopefully you can see that's quite a holistic solution. And just to talk about the maturity model. So I mentioned earlier this shouldn't be a one-off event. It's not, and it shouldn't happen in isolation. So it's not, for example, a pen test. It's not an annual audit. We need a risk-based view and a move from reactive to more of a proactive stage, so you can climb up this, what we call the maturity model. And you need to apply a cybersecurity framework to SAP, and I like NIST, and it's been mentioned earlier, but it helps organizations manage and reduce risk. So what it does do is it breaks down silos I mentioned earlier. So we have those teams around, it helps break down those silos through a common language, and it can improve the cybersecurity posture by comparing the as-is world, your now world, which is probably likely the lower end of the curve, to a to-be state. And that's based on risk assessment. It's based on your business drivers. So you can then prioritize action to measure progress towards the to-be state. And it's what I would refer to as the SAP Cyber Target Operating Model. So you can move up to that to-be state. And it's also a tool for effective communication across the org. And importantly, it's up to senior stakeholders and to the board. So when I mentioned earlier, people have these issues and they're in all the accounts. They can understand the urgency and the importance of the problems and that they are within the organization, and then assign resource to that. And we can help you on this journey. We've done this many times with some of the largest companies in the world, and it's different to different companies. So if you, for example, had been running on ERP, ECC for 20 years, you could consider vulnerability management is a great place to start. So you can start to understand existing risk. If you're planning an S4 migration or to the cloud, be it green or brownfield, it's a great opportunity to check your custom code to either get clean or stay clean, where there's literally millions of opportunities for code injections, traversals, etc. So that's the model. You can't do it all at once, but it's very important to understand that. So the Anapsys Labs I mentioned earlier, there's some numbers there, some great stats, but it basically underpins the Anapsys platform. It's our team of cybersecurity experts. We've got a huge team dedicated this to just solely look at this from a business critical application point of view. And you can see there they've found over 800 zero-day vulnerabilities, been involved in multiple government issued alerts, and we've got evidence of many SAP exploits. And one thing is that the platform is automatically updated with the latest vulnerabilities and findings. So you've got the most up-to-date platform and screening available, basically. Yeah, and it helps you it basically helps you counter the constantly evolving and growing threat landscape, which we've mentioned earlier. So a little bit more about the products. So I skimmed over those earlier, but with Assess, what we're doing differently is we are finding and remediating risk. So it's things about configuration settings in SAP. It's about patches, code analysis, authorizations, default auths, insecure interfaces, and there's literally hundreds of checks you can be scheduled to run, and it can be connected to many different systems. So it's from one central point. You can perform those checks across all your environment, and it will give you the findings back. And then you can use that to track and monitor. With Defend, it's around continuous monitoring for cyber attacks, privilege misuse, or material weaknesses. And what happens is we trigger an alarm to take action. And it also integrates, as mentioned earlier, to SIM tools such as Splunk, ArcSight, QRadar. And out of the box, there's 3,000 plus checks available. So as you deploy the solution, from day one, it's active and scanning for any of those 3,000 plus and increasing every fortnight checks. And with control, this is about managing change and supporting the DevSecOps. So it's this whole movement of shift left to perform early in the dev cycle and embed security-focused checks early in the whole cycle. So it automates the code and it integrates to your transport systems as well. So throughout that app development lifecycle, you can perform these checks. It integrates to standard ABAP Workbench. Also, the new UI tools such as HANA, Studio, Eclipse, BTP, and Fiori. And with Comply, this is again moving from point-in-time, sample-based process checks to more automated compliance and audit controls. Again, there's out of the box. There's many compliance policies we check for: SOX, GDP, GDPR, NIST, PCI, SAP baseline. And in there are hundreds of checks. Again, you can schedule those. So rather than this happen annually, quarterly, periodically every 6 months, you could just schedule it weekly, daily. And it can show you how you can, from one day to the next day, move from being in a compliant position to a non-compliant position. So you can take action. And that's quite easy with the amount of people developing in the system, changing configuration settings. Again, through that distributed team, that's quite easy to happen. So hopefully that gave you an overview of the product in a bit more detail. So just to explain about why. So it's to help quickly understand the holistic risk and visibility within the business critical applications. It helps with the continuous monitoring in this real-time world we live in, from both external and internal threats as well. It helps with the shift left to strengthen the DevSecOps team, and so you don't introduce risk into your system through code, and it helps you either stay clean or get clean. And then also it's around automation and clarity around compliance checks and the audit process. So Anapsys, we are actually the only SAP cyber partner globally. So we've been around for over a decade doing this. Our focus is, as I mentioned, the application security. It's kind of what I say where two worlds collide. We've got SAP security and cyber coming together. So we've got offices in the US and EMEA, and we've got a great retention rate, and we've got 300 plus customers, and some of those are the likes of Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, and we help secure the crown jewels with those customers. So I do have just 3 takeaways really. The thing is for this is to say that, you know, there's a mindset shift. This is real. So role-based access control has been around for 30 years. Firewall value is diminished. Auth and identity are bypassed. And I'll show you that if we've got time. But we need to move from this reactive to a proactive, take a by design approach, especially to new cloud and S4 projects, and make the cyber security job, you know, job zero. The second thing is this is a continuous journey. So that model I showed you, there's no silver bullet. You can't do this all at once. So start with an assessment, identify the risk, and then align this to your business drivers, and then you can prioritize action. And we offer the platform to do that and can scale with your requirements. And unfortunately, this cyber maturity process never stops, and it shouldn't happen in isolation, be it one of those teams or just by certain applications in isolation. And the last thing is, you know, do nothing isn't an option. Impact and probability are both increasing, so you need to act now. And people are now realizing and understanding this ERP blind spot problem. We speak to a lot of people, a lot of customers, and they are coming to us now to say, we have this problem, we've realized this, can you help? So yeah, the time to act is now.
Really interesting. Thank you, Jonathan. I do think we've got time for, if you want to run through a demonstration of an exploit. I think that would be interesting. And whilst you pull that up, one of the questions that we've had sent through was, you started to address it there. Where does somebody start so that they can assess their maturity against their, you described it as the target security operating model. Where's the best place to start? And I think you said, you know, conduct an assessment first, find out what your problems are, and then start to address those. But could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I think the best place to start is with an assessment. So, you know, we can run an assessment, perform a scan. That's quite a straightforward exercise. It's between a 1 to 2 hour timeline. And we can check your system for vulnerabilities. It's different from security unorths and general controls you will have in place. Like I said earlier, it's looking at configuration issues, patching issues, default auths, who they're assigned to, insecure interfaces, all those good things. But it can scan many systems. So we scan, you know, ABAP systems, we scan Java, internet-facing systems, Solman, where it's connected to many systems, to find all the exploits. And it's really the start of the journey. So yeah, and it aligns to, you know, NIST, identify risk, identify where you've got issues, and then take action to protect and detect beyond that. So yeah. Yeah.
No, thank you. And I think I agree with you. I think you've got to identify a problem before you start to protect against it. And then I do think that defend element of continuous monitoring of the state of your estate and the potential exploit of vulnerabilities, and getting some near real-time intelligence, if not real-time intelligence, on when somebody's trying to exploit them is a really important part of moving at least halfway up that maturity curve that you described.
Yeah, sure, yeah. And then when we do the assess, we don't just give you all the bad news. You don't just say, sorry guys, you've got 200 issues here and 50 of those are critical and high. We actually, as part of the assess module, it gives you the remediation steps. It shows you step by step how to fix those issues. So again, there's a lot of knowledge in there. There's a lot of intel from the labs who've been doing this for 10 years is included in that assessment. Yeah. So yeah. So just check, can you see the screen, James, the SAP system?
Yeah, that's coming through okay, thanks.
Lovely, okay. So it's just an example here. So we've got this user in SAP. He's in this DI1 system. And this guy works in finance, Tom. And he's got access to a few transactions. And one of them in his finance role is to look at vendors. So he decides to check this vendor 3000. And what he can do is he can navigate to the payment terms, payment transactions. And he can just, as his daily job would do, he could look at payment information around bank details. And for this customer, who's vendor 3000, CEB New York, this is the bank, and these are the bank details. So Tom thinks, well, I'll try and change this. I'll change it to another account, my own account. So he tries to do this through the change, and he can't, because as you'd expect, there's role-based access controls in place to stop him doing this. Tom can view the record. He can't change or create or edit this in any way, which is good. So what he does do is he starts to find some information. So he could just look at the table name where this is held. He can start to glean some information. He makes a note that the table where it's held is this LFBK table in SAP. Okay. And so then what Tom does is I'm not going to show you this because I don't want to basically show you how to hack a system, but he goes online and he starts to do some research, and he finds that there's you know, a misconfiguration he can take advantage of. It's an ACL misconfiguration. It's related to an SAP gateway for a specific port. And this can lead to a full remote command execution against that system. So he goes to this site, he downloads these Python scripts, he unpacks them, and then he can go into a system, PuTTY. And again, I've hidden some of the commands here. But basically, what he can do is he can just, what he's done is run a command to say, show me the top 10 results for that table, LFBK. And these are the results. And you can see there, we've got vendor 3000, and that's the bank account number, which corresponds to the SAP information there. So what he can do is he can just run another script, and he can then change that. So what he'll do is take this, and one row has been affected. Yep. So what I can do now is I'll just view the records again, and what you'll see is that customer now, that vendor, sorry, has got a different bank account number, 123456. It is actually updated and amended that record. So let's go back into SAP. Still in display mode, goes back in there. And you'll see that that bank account detail has been changed. Yeah. So he's managed to bypass his auths. He's done this through a back door. And what might happen is the financial controller or an audit team may periodically run a report, such as this one. Let's view changes to vendor records. And let's look specifically at this one, 3000. And you'll see that it's not been recorded today. It's just been registered, basically. Yeah. So it's almost invisible. So if I just log into the SAP system, it's timed me out, so I'll just log in now.
Yeah, and I think what's critical here is this. We showed that the standard authorizations that we would normally maintain within the application were protecting this vendor record, in our traditional manner, but with easily accessible scripts. And when John says easily accessible, he means you can go on GitHub and find these things in seconds, and people do. You can change this data at the database level, come in remotely or traverse from other systems. You can do remote SQL type modifications and really bypass the authorizations that, and a lot of us have spent our lives building roles and authorizations to try and secure this data, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be, I was just viewing the vendor records there. I could view personnel records. I could view info types in HR, PA8, salary information, PA7 and 6, address information, and download that. And then it's a compliance violation. So it could be any table. It's full admin rights of that system,
So, and things like intellectual property and those elements as well. So, it's not just personal data. There's recipes and things like that stored in manufacturing systems and logistics. Some of our customers use sensitive data for various business processes and sensitive clients.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is a real risk that people can exploit.
Absolutely, and the IP is different to different companies. So it could, like say, recipes, price lists, bombs, routings, whatever it is, that can all be accessed and downloaded and seen. So yeah, it's key. So this is the Anapsys platform. Just a very quick, this is the landing page, and you get the KPIs, the dashboards, the number of exploits, vulnerabilities, ranked by how critical they are, histograms over time. I mentioned earlier that you can connect this and plug into different systems in your landscape. So here you can see that we've got a number of SAP systems. We've also got an Oracle system connected, business objects. We've got SuccessFactors, HANA-Box, ABAP, Java systems, Joule Stack. So lots of different systems, and then we can access and perform all these activities on. But I just wanted to show you here, if I go into the defend area. So what you could see is earlier, this was all invisible pretty much from the SAP and bypassed from the SAP world. But if you look at the timestamp here, 2 minutes ago, which is about when I did that, as I started that exploit, the exploit of this, so basically it's jumping through an SAP XPG server to start performing these remote command executions, it was detected. So the first thing is we've detected this, and what we can do is we can just click into this and then find out some further details. So the time and dates, let me just go into the incidents box. So yeah, this is all the incidents, and this is one we were looking at earlier. And we also can look at alarms here. Can apply these alarms here. And this one here, that's the time 132. It was affecting this asset, which is the DI1 system we were logged into. That's the SAP system we were in at the time. And I can just click into this for some more detail. And you can tell me when this happened, what SAP user was being. It's the SAP star it uses to jump in there, their IP address. I can click in some further details. So the SAP system, high confidence, and what it does do, it tells me the matching ID. So as I mentioned earlier, out of the box, we've got 3,000 plus alarms and vulnerabilities which we check for, and this is one of them. So behind the scenes, we've done the hard work and intelligence to gather this in what we call an incident. So you can find out further details of this if you wish to. I'll just copy that. And also there's some other info. Is an ABAP exploit. This is the system exploit, as we call it. What I can do is I just nip back here, and I can say, just click on here, and we've got a library of incidents and alarms that we can look for, and you can just look for anything. It could be ABAP downloads, it could be a certain alarm. I'll just search for this one, and there's a matching result. And it says it's this. It says Turnkey Blaze exploit, and it tells you the root cause, and it's saying that someone's taking care of an insecure ACL. So what I can do from here is, first of all, this will integrate the alarms. Then this incident can have an alarm, which can then integrate to a SIM tool. So your SOC team, your SIM tool will see this event from an SAP world. So rather than just getting thousands and thousands of events per day, this is a high priority, a critical one, straight to the SOC team. They've got immediate visibility of this and start to investigate.
Yeah.
And
that actually leads quite nicely into a question that's just come through saying, is this platform used at the moment by any MSSPs to manage SOC for SAP?
Yes, a lot of our partners are using this, and they offer it as a MMSP, but it also integrates to, on that previous slide I showed, all the, the standard SIM tools, like all the common tools, Splunk, QRadar, ArcSight, etc. And the key purpose is visibility, because you have all those, you will have these tools in place, but the SAP events are missing from that integration. Often they are missing. So it just reduces all that noise, picks out those outliers, and feeds it into those tools. So yes, it does.
Yeah, similar to what we were talking about with SIEM integration, where you only really want to export the relevant events to a SIEM for actionable intelligence, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And then what I can do is I can say, all right, this is a 10K incident, it's an ACL. So I'll nip back into my assess area, and I can just go to the issues area, and I'll just do a search for example 10K. It'll just be another 60 seconds. Mm-hmm. And then I can see there's an incident here, and you can see severity is high. It's the highest severity we have. Click into this, and I'll see, oh, actually it's against the DI1 system. So what I can do is just click into this and look at the full details. And what we have here is, it gives you a description of the problem. So what the actual issue is. It'll give you the impact as well. So basically, full admin rights, exploit of the system to start running these commands. And then also the step-by-step technical solution. So how to fix this. So quite clear, it's quite simple to follow. Yes, this is aimed at the kind of the basis users and the team, but nevertheless, it's helpful in them resolving this issue quickly. And there's two methods to do this, so they're both listed. And then at the bottom also SAP notes and libraries to assist with this. And what's of interest is this example here is a 9.4 out of 10. So on a critical rating, you're right up there. It's a 9.4. Yeah. So and I just go back now to finish to show you that all that, all these things can be tracked and used to monitor, to control. So as I mentioned, you may run an assessment and you may get, 100 critical issues. But then you can start to assign these to people and integrate to ServiceNow for tracking purposes, but also in your own world, assign people and prioritize these according to your org. So that was just very quickly a demo of the problem and how it's bypassed that exploit bypassed all the current controls, but how we can pick it up and help resolve that, and I basically identify it as well. The key thing is the identification, and then after we have identified it, the resolution through these we call the issues and the tracking of those.
Really helpful, thank you, John. And yeah, I think a level of visibility beyond what certainly when I was starting out and just a roles and users administrator, I would have had no idea about any of these exploits back then. We've got a couple of minutes left and one question left to go through, which says, with only 3 days to apply patches, how can we react quickly enough to protect ourselves when it can take much longer to test those patches?
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's actually quite unrealistic to expect anyone to apply a patch within 3 days. So what we do is we say, okay, you can't apply the patch, but use defend to what we offer a compensating control. So basically, if someone does then try and use the fully weaponized exploit, which is likely available or could be available, if they try and run that against your system, it can be identified and detected. So then you can start, incident response and start to respond to that activity. Yeah. Otherwise, you're often blind. You don't know, and then you can prioritize the fix, as in applying the patch when you can. So yeah, often you can't because of functionality, because of Windows, the Windows when you have time to do those and shut the systems down, maintenance windows. It may be the fact that it could impact some of the functionality in the SAP system. So there's many reasons why you can't. Yeah.
And I saw within the solution that you showed us on screen, oftentimes the patch that is released by SAP comes with a small scale fix that you can apply until you can patch, and that was identified in there as well. I know that was certainly the case for the recon vulnerability of 2019/20. And there are things you can do to protect yourself, but as John says, that visibility of proactively managing when these exploits are being exploited really allows you to protect yourself. Really insightful session. Thank you, John. If anyone has any questions or wants to follow up, please reach out to myself or John directly. Would be happy to deal with any questions. Just a quick reminder of what's coming up after us. So at 2 o'clock, the next session on stage is going to be Vincent Du from SAP discussing SAP Enterprise Threat Detection and integrating that with your cybersecurity strategy. Always good to hear from Vincent. And after that, we're going to take a focus on pen testing and really drilling in on these vulnerabilities and making sure we address the ones that can be exploited. And then finally, we're wrapping up the day with our panel session on picnic, problem in the chair or the computer. And we'll hopefully close out a very interesting day. John, thank you again. Always insightful whenever we get together.
Yeah.
I hope everybody's found it useful.
Lovely. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks very much.
Cheers. Bye.